So windbreak design, we have a very nice wind today coming in this direction, and we have here a lot of evergreen pines along a plantation, right? They're growing rosemary from what I see here, and some other herbs. It's like thyme and oregano and such. And yeah, you can see where the wind is kind of coming in and it's actually tapping these lovely plants. And then as you move further down, you see a lot less wind occurring. And so as far as the height and the distance of the windbreak will determine what kind of protection you get. And of course, the way the windbreak is shaped will determine how that air will move through and over the space. And so yeah, it's very good to have a windbreak in your fields like this, so that you can reduce the amount of stress on the plant. The wind will dry the plant, the wind will break the plant if it's very strong, and you would have to water a lot more. Also, the soil gets very dry. As you can see here, they have mostly the soil bare, and they're doing hand weeding of the grasses that are growing. Why? Why not just mulch heavily and do it properly the first time and get much less work? You'll have much less effect from the wind as far as drying is concerned, and you'll get better productivity in that way. But in this sense, at least they have some form of a break that's occurring, and that's assisting with like the reduction of watering needs. They're doing this plastic method on drip lines, so they have a drip line in between, and of course, so that does help reduce the amount of water that you need. And of course, the kind of plants, these herbs, they don't need as much water as, say, lettuce, for example. I like it. I love seeing people growing organically, and I always feel that it could be much better. Let's take a look on the other side of this windbreak, and we'll see what's happening on there. So, if you're wanting to grow bananas, you know they have these very big, large, open leaves. And when you see the leaves like this, brown, brittly, torn up, of course that means there's been a lot of wind that's been coming across those leaves and tearing it up. And you're going to see a big reduction in the amount of productivity of the plants. Also, I can see they cut them, but they're not fully thinned as well as they could be. And of course, you have a lot of grasses growing along it, causing a competition between the herbs, the herbaceous and the grass species. So, if you want to get better productivity, quite simply, why not have the bananas on the leeward side rather than on the windward side, and then use this as a means to plant more plants to create the effect you're looking for of lifting that wind. So when you think of a windbreak, think more of like a wind lift, so that you're not creating walls of plants, but you're actually creating a staging of plants that lift the wind up, and you get at least 60% of that wind moving up and over at the distance necessary. So there's a slight calculation. You can just, per se, say 1 to 4. If you have 10 feet up, you're getting about 40 feet across. And so you can use that as a general and start figuring out how much height do I need, how much distance do I need to throw that wind up and over, still having wind coming through, so that naturally you get this effect of diverting the wind and creating more productivity for your plants, for your home if you're doing it for a home, to kind of block cool winds or hot winds, or send cool winds through if you're in a hot season or weather. So it's up to you, but it's not difficult. It's just learning about what plants are good for windbreaks, learning what heights are needed, what distance is needed, and then seeing the excellent results from that. You can increase productivity by 30% as far as like production of plants can go, just by having a windbreak. You can reduce energy needs by the same in your home just by having a windbreak. So windbreaks are fairly important when doing good design. So look at this hedge right here. We have a beautiful bougainvillea that is acting as a hedge. It gives color, it gives a feeling of like, wow, life is colorful and beautiful. And of course they cut it on a regular basis and trim it, and they put some maintenance into it, so you get this effect. However, if you just look straight across from it, you have 2 more hedges that are used in the farming space, which are rosemary. And it can have the same exact effect, except rather than just having a maintained hedge, that you're actually putting in certain phosphorus or potassium to get all of this flower to keep flushing and blooming, putting in these unnecessary fertilizers. You could just have a hedge that's actually giving essence of aromas and smells, and yes, it does produce some flowers, maybe not as bright as this, but at least it has that same function. And at the same time, you can maximize more of that farm space for plants that actually need to be on a drip line and need to have that kind of specific way of growth. So turn it around, you know. Let's change this ornamentality to a functioning food hedge, like a fedge, and start making a difference in what we design so we can recline.
And now we're actually coming into our orchard. So we have a diverse sort of food forest that we are creating. We have a lot of different fruits. We have a lot of citrus, lemons, limes, oranges, mangoes, papayas, soursop, sapodilla, and the whole sort of like design behind it is that we're trying to create sort of a very diverse and sort of natural occurring system where we're not doing like perfectly aligned rows of the same fruit trees, but a lot of like split up trees divided up by Gliricidia that are providing nutrients for the fruit trees, but also shade and windbreak. And then in between the fruit trees and Gliricidia, we are actually doing alley cropping, or what we like to call sneaky rows. So you can see here, this is a mango tree that was planted about 2 years ago maybe. And they'll start fruiting here, and probably within the next year or so we'll start getting fruit from them. Got some orange trees right here. So as I said before, this is we have what we call sneaky rows, or alley cropping, and you can see we have our larger sort of support tree in the back. This is the Gliricidia, and then in between we have the Calamungai or Moranga. Moranga is an amazing plant. It's a superfood. It's loaded with nutrients and antioxidants, very diverse, very hardy, and it's a great addition to any system. So this right here is a prime example of a food forest where we have created a system where we have multiple layers, support trees, fruit trees, and a lower story crop. So you can see here we have our overstory Gliricidia trees that are providing the shade, nutrients, windbreak for our taro, which is growing in between the space from the Gliricidia to our larger fruit trees. This is a soursop, and we have a tangerine, a lime tree, we have some chili peppers growing over there, there's a mango tree, and the whole idea with here is that we're trying to maximize our use of space. We're trying to use the space in the most efficient way as possible, and to create a system that doesn't require a lot of work on our end, where we can sort of have these self-sustaining systems, and we only have to come in, water them, harvest, add some nutrients, some compost to make them happier. So we've created a microclimate here, and we're growing cacao. So here in Waianae, we get an average of about 22 inches of rain, and cacao needs about 60 to 100 inches because it's a rainforest tree. So what we are experimenting here is to create sort of this microclimate to create an ideal climate for our cacao to grow. So we have the Gliricidia, which is also known as Madre de Cacao, mother of cacao, and then we've planted the cacao underneath, and we're using these pallets to create a windbreak for the trees when they're in the young stages. Once they mature and they get full size, they're more hardy, we'll take these pallets away. But they're very, you wouldn't think that a pallet would provide enough windbreak for a tree, but it's impressive how just those few rungs in the pallets will actually break up that flow and really help the plants.
So we've also done something interesting on the edges of the building. Based on that we're on the roof, we have a lot of wind coming, and so we've planted a hedgerow that'll be a windbreak but also a beneficial insect habitat. And so we have a diversity of natives and some functional plants. This is a sticky monkey flower, mimulus, some different sages, native sages. We have coffee berry as well. And these are all selected in the sense that throughout the year we provide nectar for the beneficial insects, because if we have an aphid issue here on the kale, we want ladybugs, green lacewings, other beneficials to be able to address that problem. But when we don't have an infestation, they need somewhere to live. So these hedgerows have been selected for seasonal nectar flow. So each one produces a certain amount of nectar for the beneficial insects, the bees, the butterflies, and then they also have some function. So we also put in some different sages and thyme and oregano, and some plants for tea and herbs for the scent as well in different places. But these are all getting very well established. You know, here's an interesting issue with the sage here. It kind of got a little broken. I don't know if that was from the wind but this was this thing has almost tripled in size since we planted it, and we can probably that can probably heal itself up in that. Given our timeline and what we have, probably by next spring, these will be up to this bar or higher, and it'll surround us with a little windbreak. So as the wind comes across the bay, it'll then keep everything low in protection. And here on this edge is really interesting. You see a lot more ceanothus and hardy perennials, because this is our corridor from which the wind is coming. Hence the parsley and the kale and the chard. They're a little bit more strong, a little bit more woody, as opposed to our arugula and everything that's kind of put up on the upper roof, which we should